My name is Daniel. At least, that's the name I'll use tonight. If you know me, you already know what happened. If you don't, pour yourself something warm. Sit somewhere with the lights on. I'm serious about that last part. It was September. My wife Kara and I had just bought the house on Millbrook Road. It was everything we'd been looking for. 3 bedrooms, a big back garden, old stone walls. The kind of place that felt like it had a soul. The estate agent called it a hidden gem. She said the previous owners had left in a hurry and that the price reflected the need for a quick sale. We thought we'd gotten lucky. We were so incredibly wrong. The first week was fine, beautiful even. Kara arranged the bedroom while I unpacked the kitchen. Our dog, a 6-year-old golden retriever named Hector, ran circles in the garden for 3 hours straight. We ordered pizza, drank cheap wine, and slept better than we had in years. The second week was when Hector stopped going near the cellar door. I noticed it on a Tuesday. He'd been following me everywhere. That's just what he does. But when I walked toward the far end of the kitchen, where the cellar door was built into the floor with an iron ring handle, he stopped at exactly the same spot each time. About 3 feet away. He'd sit. He'd stare at the door. And then, very slowly, he'd back away and go lie in the hallway. I laughed about it, told Kara that maybe there was a smell down there. Old houses have all kinds of smells. She agreed. We put a rug over the cellar door. That night I heard something move below it. I want to describe it accurately because I've spent a long time trying to explain it away. It wasn't pipes. I know what pipes sound like. I grew up in a Victorian terrace. I've heard every variation of a boiler dying and water hammer and all of it. This was different. This was weight. Deliberate weight. One slow, heavy footstep. Then silence. I got up. I pulled the rug back. I stood over the cellar door with my phone torch on, just looking at the iron ring. Hector was in the doorway behind me and he was trembling, visibly trembling. He let out one low whine, not a bark, not an alert, a whine. The kind you hear at the vet when a dog knows something bad is coming. I didn't open the door that night. The next morning, in full daylight, I did. I grabbed a torch, opened the hatch, and went down into the cellar. It was small, maybe 4 meters by 4. Stone walls, dirt floor, old wooden shelves, a broken ceramic pot in the corner, spiderwebs. Nothing. I told Kara. She suggested it might have been a rat, something in the walls. I nodded and tried to believe it. But here's the thing. The dirt floor. When I shone my torch across it that morning, and I've looked at this detail 1,000 times since, there were marks in it. Not drag marks, not claw marks, not random disturbances. They were impressions. The kind a person's weight makes when they've been standing still for a very long time. 2 feet, side by side, right beneath the cellar door. 3 days later, our neighbor knocked on the door. Her name was Margaret, late 60s, white hair pulled back, cardigan and walking boots. She brought us a jar of jam from her garden. We invited her in for tea. She sat at our kitchen table, looked around the house slowly, and said something I've never forgotten. She said, "You haven't been going down there, have you?" I asked her what she meant. She looked at me for a long moment, the kind of look that searches your face for how much you already know. And then she said she'd lived next door for 31 years, that 4 families had lived in this house in that time, that every one of them had left before the year was out. Kara asked her why. Margaret said, "Because of what's in the cellar." She told us that in the early 1980s, the house had been owned by a man named Aldous Greaves. He'd lived alone, kept to himself. He had, she chose her words slowly, unusual interests. He'd converted the cellar, reinforced the floor, and he'd put a lock on the inside of the cellar door. She said that one winter the house went quiet for months. No lights, no movement. When the council finally sent someone to check, Aldous Greaves was gone. The cellar was empty. But the lock on the inside of the door had been engaged from within, and then it hadn't, like something had unlocked it and left, or come back. She stood up. She smoothed her cardigan. At the door she turned and said, and I'm giving you her exact words, she said, "Don't go down there after dark. Not ever. And if you hear something below the floor at night, don't respond to it. They stop eventually, but only if you don't respond." Then she walked back to her house, and we never saw her leave it again. I should have listened to Margaret. That's the part I replay, that one decision. Kara was away the following Thursday, visiting her sister 2 hours north. I was alone. It was just past midnight, and I heard it again. One footstep, below the cellar door. I'd had 2 glasses of wine. I'd been angry all day, at myself, at Margaret, at the idea that I was living in fear of sounds in an old house. I am not a superstitious person. I was furious at how small I'd been feeling for 2 weeks, so I made a decision. I pulled back the rug, I grabbed the iron ring, and I knocked back. Nothing. For a long moment, nothing at all. And then, directly beneath my feet, something knocked back. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Slow, patient, like something that had been waiting for exactly this, for me to acknowledge it, for a very, very long time. What I did next, I still can't explain it. I've worked through it with a therapist for 2 years, and we still don't have a clean answer. Some part of me, the same stupid, irrational part that knocked back, pulled open the hatch. The steps went down into black. My torch lit the top 4 steps, and then nothing. The beam just died. Have you ever seen a torch fail in pitch black? The light doesn't fade, it just stops, and you're left with this ring of space around you and absolute darkness everywhere else. Hector was gone from the hallway. I hadn't heard him at all since midnight. That's when my blood went cold. I called his name down into the cellar. He answered, from the bottom of the stairs. A single, quiet bark. The normal bark he does when I call him from another room. "Come find me, Dad. Come down." The thing about that is, the front door was locked. The back door was locked. Every window was closed. There is no way Hector could have gotten into that cellar on his own. I heard his nails on the stone floor below. The familiar click, click, click of a golden retriever walking on hard surfaces. My dog. My boy. Down there in the dark. The worst kind of calm, someone who's already crossed the line. I went down the stairs. Clinical, detached, trauma protection mode. I'm going to be measured here because the alternative is screaming, and I've done enough screaming to last several lifetimes. At the bottom of the stairs, in the center of the cellar, in the beam of my phone torch, was Hector. He was sitting. He was facing away from me. He was completely still. I said his name. He didn't move. I crossed the cellar to him. I put my hand on his back. He was warm. He was breathing. But he wouldn't turn around. And his breathing was wrong, too slow, too deep, completely rhythmic in a way that didn't feel like sleep and didn't feel like anything else I could name. Then my torch hit the wall in front of him, the only time genuine composure there was writing on the wall. Scratched into the stone. Recent. The dust was still falling from the grooves. Dozens of lines. Hundreds. Floor to ceiling. The same 4 words, over and over and over again. You should not have. A single distant sound. A door closing somewhere above. I picked Hector up. He's 30 kilograms, but I didn't feel his weight at all. I went up the stairs. I didn't look back. I crossed the kitchen, grabbed my keys and wallet, and I left the house. I drove to a travel lodge 40 minutes away. I sat in the car park for an hour before I could go inside. Hector sat in the passenger seat and stared out the windscreen the whole time. He didn't look at me once that night. He was back to normal by morning, tail wagging, looking for breakfast. He never showed any sign of what happened. No vet found anything wrong with him. He's fine. He's asleep at my feet as I type this. I've never been fine. Not since. We contacted the estate agent the following week, asked for everything on the property's history. She was cagey. Said previous owners had signed non-disclosure agreements, which should have been our first question when we bought the place and wasn't. She confirmed, after a long silence, that there had been incidents with previous occupants. She would not elaborate. We found Aldous Greaves in the local historical records. Born 1931. No death record in any county database we could access. He simply stops. No death certificate. No last known address. No record of emigration. Just a man who owned a house on Millbrook Road and then ceased to exist in 1984. The concrete liner Margaret mentioned, the one that had been on the cellar floor, we found it, not removed. It was stacked against the garden wall beneath an overgrown hedge. Someone had taken it up from the inside, in pieces, slowly, over what must have been a very long time. We sold the house 6 weeks after moving in. We took a significant loss. We didn't care. The new buyers were a young couple. I tried to warn them. I pulled the husband aside, told him about the sounds, the writing, the footprints. He looked at me with polite concern and the expression of someone who thinks the previous owner has had a breakdown. I've searched for that couple online twice a year since we sold. As of last month, I can no longer find any trace of them either. I do think, if you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Right now, wherever you're listening to this, is there a sound in your house that you've explained away? A creak you blamed on the wood? A shadow at the edge of a doorway? A dog that won't go near a particular room? Here's the thing that keeps me awake. Not the writing on the wall, not the sounds, not even whatever left those footprints in the dirt. It's the fact that it waited. It had been in that house for decades. It had learned the patterns of 4 different families. It knew how to use a voice. It knew which sound would make a person come down those stairs. It knocked back because it knew that I would open the door. It had done this before. It will do it again. And the family that lives there now, whoever they are, they haven't posted anything online. They haven't told anyone, which either means nothing has happened yet, or it means they can't. Subscribe to Mark Horror Tales. Drop 1 word in the comments describing how you feel right now. Just 1 word, no explanation. I read every single one. Sleep well, if you can.